Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. This week's podcast is kind of a special podcast, or they're all special, but this one's a little more special, I guess, because we just finished the Pickleball Summit. We wrapped that this week. I had the opportunity to interview my friend and partner in crime, we like to call each other, CJ Johnson from Better Pickleball, VIPickleball, and the Pickleball Summit. So, I had an opportunity to chat with her about our wrap for the Pickleball Summit and exchange some ideas about what we experienced and also what we learned, some of what we learned there. We're also going to be following that up with some really interesting analysis, I think. We're doing some blog posts and things like that, kind of summarizing some points from the summit. So if you signed up for the wearepickleball.com, if you're on that mailing list, you'll get access to the blog posts because we'll be sending those out. And lastly, if you did not get a chance to check out the summit, you can still check it out. There's an all-access pass. There's information. I'll link to it in the show notes. You can check it out there. It'll give you the whole agenda, and then you can decide whether it's right for you. But it's definitely a lot of really good content in there from 30 presenters. I told CJ it's the largest pickleball event that I'm aware of its type, to have this type of this number of presenters in one place in one time talking about pickleball and sharing their knowledge about pickleball. It was really fascinating. So without further ado, let's jump into the podcast. CJ, it was a crazy week this week with the Pickleball Summit, the 2021 Pickleball Summit. It's your second summit. It's my first summit, other than being, I helped you on the last one a little bit on the side, but my first full-time summit. I am exhausted. How are you feeling, CJ?
I'm tired, but I will tell you one thing that I'm looking forward to doing. Tomorrow, I'm getting out on the pickleball court. We've been talking pickleball for 4 days, and I am chomping at the bit to go and play.
I'm actually playing tomorrow, too. I haven't played in a while. I have a tournament next week. I was joking with you earlier. I'm like, yeah, I only play at tournaments. That's like my play time is when I go to a tournament. That's when I play some pickup games and then play in the tournament. But tomorrow I'm going to get on the court. So definitely be fun to apply some of the concepts that we learned over the last few days. I tell you what really stood out to me, CJ. Obviously the content was fantastic. The everything was an amazing experience with the summit. What stood out to me was the generosity, I want to say, or the willingness of these folks, all experts in their field, all knowledgeable about pickleball, just their love of sharing knowledge, right? And that was a summit was about, bringing those people together and giving them a forum to communicate with pickleball players who are interested in improving, interested in learning more, just broadening their minds. And I thought that was fantastic, CJ. Just the giving by our presenters was amazing.
It was pretty interesting. Some of the presenters we'd never met before. We'd seen their work. As an example, Brad Walker, the stretch coach. I've seen his work. I've watched him for a long time. Jackson Corley at Incrediwear. I've used his products since 2011. The socks helped me with plantar fasciitis, and I reached out to, both of us did. We reached out to a lot of these people and told them what we were doing. And it was amazing how they just jumped in, gave of themselves, not only the presentations that most people saw, but the backstage pass. That was for our VIP members and for the all access pass holders to meet and rub elbows with the day's presenters. And the majority of the presenters took time out of their day and showed up to meet all of these people. It was such a wonderful event.
CJ, and Yvonne showed up several times. Yvonne Ting, our friend, that was amazing. And the other thing that was, we reached out to Pickleball Central, right? And we were like, hey, can y'all help us out with some presentation on maybe paddles or balls or something like that? And they're like, sure. Our CEO is totally like, he's into balls and knows balls, and we're like, awesome. So we had Edward. We had never met him before. I mean, there's so many stories about that. And the other thing that was surprising, and I don't mean the surprising like I didn't think that they could bring the information, because obviously that's why we asked them. But even folks who I've known for a while, Gene Smythe, a good friend of mine who I partnered with before. I cashed my first. I can't play in the Olympics anymore because I cashed at a tournament, so I'm not an amateur anymore. But he, and Gene is super knowledgeable about the game. I know he knows what he's talking about. I know he knows the game. But just to see his delivery and his conviction, I'm going to one more, CJ, Kyle Yates. I mean, listen, Kyle is arguably if he's not the greatest player of all time, he's arguably the greatest. He's in the conversation. And I've said this before. He was there for the transition. He's a transitional player in the sport because when you look at pre-Kyle and post-Kyle, it's a different game completely. And when you look at Kyle, he's a young man. I think he's under 25, so he's in his early 20s. And to have him articulate his tip we asked him for one tip. We said, Kyle, we know you're busy. He had a clinic going on. He was super busy. We said, can you give us one tip for players who really want to improve? And his articulation of that tip was surprising. Again, not saying that he doesn't know his stuff, because obviously he does, but just the way he articulated it, I was like, wow, I was blown away by that. So
some of the things that people didn't get to see, and while you're talking about Kyle literally flew in to give a clinic, got online with us at, I think it was probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night after traveling into the mountains. He took time out of his day and represented himself as well as his company, PB 1965, amazingly well. Talk about gracious. The other one I want to touch on is Yvonne Ting. What people don't know is you and Yvonne have a relationship. It was the very first time I met.
Well, we
Yvonne.
don't have not that kind of relationship, folks. Don't get crazy at that. I know. I'm just playing around. But we're friends. We're definitely friends. She's a lefty. But go ahead.
But we weren't. I had never met Yvonne before. And the day we had set up to tape, you were traveling, and your internet was not workable. And I ended up having to interview Yvonne, and you couldn't even be in the background for that. It was just her and I on the camera talking about these different things. In fact, here's one little thing for you. If you look at the Yvonne Ting interview, all you backstage or all access pass holders, it's got Tony's name down.
Yeah, we noticed that after the fact. That was funny.
Yeah, underneath mine. But my point is, it just flowed because we're talking pickleball. And so even though we didn't know each other, we have a love for the game, and the biggest thing, a love for teaching people. And that showed in her presentation just tenfold.
The other thing, CJ, about that was funny was you both were, and I'm not saying wrongly, you both were rightly, I guess, a little nervous about having a kind of like ad lib it that way. But I told both you guys at the beginning because I was on the phone talking to him about it. And I'm like, you guys are going to be fine. Just go with it. You both know what you're talking about, so it's going to work fine. And sure enough, it's not like CJ doesn't know pickleball. It's not like Yvonne doesn't know what she's talking about. So it was just a matter of, and I can tell you, because I helped edit that presentation. There's actually some part of the presentation that's just CJ and Yvonne just kind of riffing back and forth. And it's just so natural because they both share a love of the game, an understanding of fundamentals of the game, right? And so you get those two things together, and in this kind of environment, and it's magic what happens, because you get to share all this information about the game. And I really think that Yvonne's message about, you have to work, right? If you want to improve, you have to put some work in. It doesn't happen like you don't go to bed at night and wake up in the next day and you're a better pickleball player. But her confidence on the court, her calmness on the court is just one of those things that I think most pickleball players at any stage would like to have that when they're out on the pickleball court. Just her relaxed state on the court, for sure.
I love in her presentation, and that was one of my questions for her. I really hadn't watched her play a lot. I knew who she was. I'd seen her play some points. I hadn't watched her play a lot. So here I am recording with her. And the point that we're going to use is a match point at the national championship. And they're at the non-volley zone. And the opponent on the other side of the net speeds up a very low ball. And she ducks. And I'm looking at this point going, wow, I'm impressed. I think most people, including many pros, would not have had the presence of mind to duck and to let that go. So as I'm watching these points, I got a real appreciation for her ability to control pace. And that's the comment that she was, or the topic that she was talking about during the summit, was controlling pace.
And the thing about it too is, like, letting the outball go is one of those things that, CJ and I are super attuned to that. What happens is when you start thinking about the game, or when you spend as much time with the game as CJ and I do from a an analytic standpoint, you start seeing patterns, and you start seeing you kind of start seeing things almost before they happen. So when you're watching that rally, you see it start to develop, and all of a sudden you see it break down basically where the opponent, and I think the opponent that hit it was actually Moria, hits that ball. And when you see it happening, you see it the same way that Yvonne is seeing it. And that's why she's able to let that ball go, because she's reading she's so into what's happening that she can then tell, okay, this ball is going to go out, and then basically roll out of the way to win not just the rally, but also win that game. So yeah, that was really really a lot of fun. The other thing, CJ, that jumped out at me was, we had those backstage events, right? And what was interesting there was the interaction, right? Because usually we had I think 4 or 5 presenters each evening. We had three evenings in a row. CJ and I said next summit we're having one backstage event, I think, because we were by the 8:15 backstages, we were like, well, it's 8:15 for me, 5:15 for CJ, but still a long day because she starts at 5 in the morning. But we'd be just toasted by then. And but the very first one, we had a gentleman named John who came in, and he wrote in the chat his question. And I don't remember the exact question, but it was basically, I'm new to the game. I'm 70 years old. I'm new to the game. Can you give me some advice on, like, I want to play tournaments? And you have to have seen John. I mean, he's like electric. I mean, he's in love with pickleball, like in a way that, and I don't know John. I don't know his background that much, other than I know he didn't play sports before he got into pickleball. But I don't know, like, maybe he had a fulfilling life doing other things. That's fine. But whatever he was doing, I can tell you that pickleball has broadened his life, has enriched his life, is the word I'm looking for, has added a definite new level of enrichment to his life. He's excited. I mean, he's pumped. I mean, he's 70 years old, just got into the sport. He wants to play tournaments. He was asking us questions about how to find partners. I mean, he's a guy that's just all in on pickleball. And to see that at his age coming in, and the support that he got from the other players that were there. We had one of our VI pickleballers also named John. We had John with an H, John without an H. And our VI pickleballer, John, also got into pickleball older, at about 60. And I think he said, CJ, what did he say? He said he was like in debate or something, right? That was like his athletic endeavor before, his competitive endeavor before, had been debate in high school. And he said he defined himself as like a comic book nerd, and he got into pickleball and all in. Don't mute yourself, CJ. Don't mute yourself, CJ.
He got into
Is there a jackhammer in the background? Why are you muting yourself?
I was drinking.
You can still drink. It's an interview. I mean, what is this? It's like you don't project voice like a reporter, but you wanted this to look like it's like all just do your thing.
All right. In addition, he lost 57 pounds, and he's entering his first tournament. He's got the senior games coming up. I think it's in August. He was quite the inspiration for John with the H. He was telling him what he had done and what he'd already done. And to watch that connection just between the people that were there, that was amazing. It was truly one of the highlights of the summit for me, because it was such a feel-good moment.
Yeah, and it just shows the impact of the sport, right? The interaction. I mean, and I can't remember who exactly. Actually, I think John was there actually all 3 nights. I think he came in. So he got to rub shoulders with Nicole Havlicek, with Gigi Fernandez, one of the greats of tennis. With Barrett, Kinchelo, Mark Renison. I'm missing people, but he got Yvonne. He got to rub shoulders with influencers and people who have been involved in pickleball for a while and at a high level. And John just joined the sport, and it was just awesome to see that interaction, and that I thought it was fantastic. So, CJ, I wanted to. So one of the things CJ asked me to do, and she's doing it as well, is we are putting together kind of like a post summit summary of thoughts that are we're condensing some ideas, right, that we got out of the summit. And so CJ tasked me with putting together a few things that came out of the summit for me. CJ is doing the same thing. So what I'd like to do, CJ, is if you can tease a little, because I can do mine next week on the podcast when I just do my thing. Give us a teaser. Give us a tease on one of yours.
The T's for me, and all of these are going to be surrounded around the same thing. Success leaves clues. The biggest thing is being holistic as a pickleball player. We focus so much on technique and strategy that we often, well, technique first, actually, sometimes not even strategy. Sometimes it's just technique. We forget about fitness and the mental part of the game. There were so many great things with Coach Pete. So to me, it fits into the theme that you and I already have, which is as pickleball players, if we really want to improve, we need a holistic approach to our pickleball games. And there are things that we can do on the court, but there are a lot of things that we can do off the court as well.
Absolutely. That's really awesome. I look forward to reading your in depth a little more on those. And I'm gonna tell you how to access that in a second if you're not already on our mailing list. But one of the things I think, CJ, that's important to remember too is, pickleball. Obviously, this is the Pickleball podcast. You and I are pickleball content creators, so we're focusing on pickleball. That's like the main thing on the main entree right on the table. But when you do the things that we're talking about, some of these things, they affect every part of your life. I mean, if you improve your balance and mobility, you'll get around the house easier. If you improve your visual acuity, right, which is one of the things we talked about during the summit with Lucas, you'll have lower chance of getting into an accident when you're driving. I mean, just as simple as that. When you have your family in the car, whatever, and you're driving, you're going to see better. So there's so many other benefits that they apply to pickleball, and that's great. You'll see the ball better. You'll be able to dink better. So that's good, right? I mean, that's positive. But what about all these other things, all these other benefits that you get from doing these things? I think are really, really, really important. So, CJ, one thing that you reminded me of before we got onto the interview is that I don't know if it's that I'm I'm kind of like, oh, the summit's over. It's like, what I feel for the players. I wanted more players to come to the backstage part of it, right? Because I'm like, it's just I'm there and I'm in awe, right? I mean, one night we had 4 of the 5 pickleball podcasters. 4 of them were in the room in Zoom, right? So there to answer questions at one time. It was amazing. Lynn, Barrett, Mark, and myself. So we had 4 of the. I guess you count now too. So since you're in the podcast. So, so if there are players that didn't get to make it to the summit because they didn't get the ad or they're not on an email list or whatever, they just didn't hear about it. What CJ reminded me about was that the summit it lives. In other words, it's a living thing. The information is all there. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the all access pass because it's still available to you. And I'm telling you, and CJ, what do we figure? Like 20 hours of content, something like that?
Something around that, 30 plus presenters and around 20 hours of content.
Yeah, some of the presentations are 20, 25 minutes. It was interesting, with some of them were recorded conversations that we had prior to the summit because it was just too much to do. Basically, it was 10 presentations a day, so it was just too much to do in a day. So we also wanted to give folks the flexibility to watch it when they wanted and watch what they wanted. So we basically pre-recorded 7 each day, and then we had 2 live, and then the backstage. So the pre-recorded ones were supposed to be 20. Some went like 45 minutes. Some went 25 minutes. Most of them were 20 plus minutes, and then the lives are all about an hour. So even like I'll just give you a hint. This is like Barrett Kinchel, who did our kickoff on day 1, and his presentation was around 40 to 45 minutes, and it was about anticipating play and controlling pace. And it was a fascinating way of looking at the game. It's the kind of aha moment it could be the kind of aha moment for you that you listen to that presentation, you watch this presentation, I should say, and you say, you know what, now I understand this better. And so next time you play, you're going to be a better player. So, and CJ, so that the all access pass is lifetime, right? That's how that's set up on the system.
It's a lifetime all access pass, and it's not only the videos. You get audio transcripts or audio files, transcripts, and it's on an app. So the sessions that are applicable to the court, you can take those to the court with you.
Do we have the date for the next? Because we also have a special basically it's like a wrap. So we wanted, there was so much information, and we had done the backstages every night, which I think were really good. But I don't think at that point anybody had been able to digest any of the information. It was still like bouncing around in the mind. So we said, okay, let's do another Q&A backstage kind of a thing for like a week or 2 weeks out. I know that I'm traveling and I'm in Michigan because I'm playing those 2 tournaments next week. So my guess is we're looking at the week of are we looking at the third week in July probably?
We're looking at the third week in July with your travel schedule. So somewhere after the 19th.
Okay. So if you're listening to this anytime before July 19th and you decide to jump into the All Access Pass, if you do that, then you'll get you get an email with a link to the Zoom call. We'll be able to do a Q&A with CJ and myself. It'll definitely be CJ and myself. There may be some additional presenters. My guess is if we tell Yvonne Ting, she's gonna be like, I'm there, because Yvonne loves sharing information on it, which is awesome. That's amazing. And then the other thing I was going to suggest is that, listen, guys, we do this with everything that CJ and I do. We are believers in what we're doing. So you buy the All Access Pass. You don't like it, send us a text. Send us an email, and we on all these things. We're always, if you don't like it, we'll do right by you. But I guarantee you that the information in there is the kind of information that will change your understanding of pickleball and your appreciation of the game. CJ, we're gonna wrap in a few, but before we do, I think we got to thank everybody, right? We got to thank presenters. So I'm gonna let you take that charge on that, because we had a long list of people to thank. I know we're gonna thank everybody by name, but we got a big group of people to thank. So
absolutely, let's start with all of our presenters. We wanted to thank everyone for all the time they gave to the summit and coming to those backstage passes. When do you get, Gigi Fernandez, 17-time Grand Slam champion. If you're a tennis aficionado, even if you're not, you probably know what that is. If you don't, you do know what 2 Olympic gold medals means, and she holds one of those, and she showed up at the backstage pass. So thank you to all of the presenters out there who gave so freely of not just your time, but your knowledge. It's obvious how important it is to you to grow the sport of pickleball and to share what you know with the community. We'd be remiss if we didn't thank our production crew. This is no small feat. Last year, it was a little bit smaller. We had 13 presenters. This year, we had more than 30. And as Tony said, we had a variety of both live as well as recorded. And we've got to thank the production crew. You can't imagine what goes on behind the scenes, not just from getting these to air, but from answering all of the emails and the questions and those sorts of things. So thank you to everyone who was involved in that. And then lastly, thanks to all of you that attended. We had our VIPickleball members as well as our All Access Pass holders. Welcome to the family, All Access Pass holders. We're glad to have you. But to everyone who attended the summit, what that tells Tony and me is that you're taking your game seriously. You want to improve at pickleball. So if you just took one thing away from the summit and started to implement that into your pickleball, that's a success. And we are inspired by you. That's why we create this content. And then lastly, to my partner, couldn't have done it without you. Wouldn't have done it without you. There's no way I could have managed this whole thing all by myself. You were awesome, Tony. Thank you so much for all that you do for the pickleball community as well as VIPickleball.
I appreciate the thanks, or the thought, but I am 100% confident that this would have happened with or without me, because CJ Johnson produces content and gets things done, no questions asked. So and CJ, obviously this is your brainchild and your love child, I want to say. So this is like your thing, and so really, it's awesome that you put this together. And I'm honored that you invited me or allowed me to be a part of this process with you, because it's been a lot of fun. I do want to say one last thing, CJ. Obviously, I think well, let me echo one thing real quick before I do that. If you're listening to this podcast or you came to the summit, even if you don't listen to the podcast, kind of like the tree in the forest, right? If you're not hearing this, but you still came to the summit, you are working on your game. CJ and I are actually starting to use the term, sometimes you hear us refer to people, viewers, subscribers, things like that, players sometimes. But we're working hard ourselves as learners ourselves to use the term athlete with you. And the reason we're using the term athlete, it's a very intentional act by us, because if you are listening to podcasts like this, if you're going to if you're attending summits, if you're taking lessons, if you're VIPickleball, if you're watching our content, things like that, you're an athlete. You're studying the game. You're acting with intentionality. And this is not meant to be any kind of a criticism of folks that want to go out to the court and just bang the ball around. I have no criticism of that. I think it's fantastic if you just want to be socialized and have a good time. But once you cross that threshold and you say, you know what, I'm going to study this game a little more. I had a call. I told CJ, I think I told CJ this the other day. I had a call from someone that I had worked with in clinics a year or so ago, or a couple years ago, actually now. And she reached out to me and she said, basically, I'll paraphrase it. Basically, like, I'm kind of getting it now. Like, I'm seeing it now, and I want to see more. Like, she wanted to, she had played and she enjoyed playing, and nothing wrong with that, again, socially, and that's fine. But now it's like there was like a hunger. There was like this voice in the back of her head going like, there's something I want to know. I want to understand this better. So she reached out and she wanted to learn more. And so if you're watching these things or listening to these things, it's because you want to know more. And anytime you want to know more about to me, and you're dedicated and you're acting positively, right? You're moving in a positive direction. You're now an athlete. So you're going to hear CJ and I start using that term more and more. So don't be like, what are they talking about, athlete? I'm not in the Olympics or something like that. You don't have to be in the Olympics to be an athlete. You're an athlete by engaging in this activity, in this sport that we all love, and in taking these steps. CJ, one more thing before we go. Can you I don't have it in front of me. I don't know if you do. Can you let the folks know? I know it's closed registration right now, but it may be open in the next couple of weeks. So if people are interested, I know we put together a couple of camps. It's we're putting everything that we know about the game on the court, and we have a couple of camps coming up in beautiful Lake Tahoe, Nevada. At least beautiful that I've seen in photos. CJ can attest to its beauty, but Lake Tahoe, Nevada in September, which I understand is unbelievable, like almost like story time. Not story time, like a fantasy book or something. So CJ, what are the dates on those?
The Lake Tahoe camps are September 7th through the 9th or September 13th through the 15th here in Incline Village, Nevada. We will be opening any remaining camp spots to the public on the 10th of July.
Nice. All right. So if you're interested in the 10th, if you're interested, I would say send an email. Where's the email address, CJ?
It's camps@wearepickleball.com. And so, go
ahead, sorry.
If you're listening to this after the 10th of July, you can find this more information at wearepickleball.com/camps. That's where the page will be live to get all the details as well as to register.
I know that we're already almost half full with the pre-registrations. So hopefully there'll be a few spots left if you're interested. But I would suggest, listen, if you're interested, let us know. Send us an email at the email that CJ gave you. Was it camp or camps? I can't remember.
Camps with a plural. Camps plural. Okay. Yep. Camps@wearepickleball.com.
And if you send us some emails, there might be camps with many S's. We'll see. But if you let us know that you're interested in it, CJ and I, we're happy to be on the court with you. We have a lot of stuff going on, with what we're doing with VIPickleball and the Summit and things like that. But we love being on the court with folks, with players who want to improve, with athletes, like I mentioned earlier. So if you're interested in that, send us an email. Let us know. That'll give us an indication that maybe I need to extend my time in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and we will do the best we can to get you on the court with us. So CJ, thank you very much again for the summit. Thanks to all the presenters. Thanks to the production team. Thanks to everybody who participated, all the athletes who came to the summit. And let's get ready for the next one, right, CJ?
You know it. Next one's coming your way.
All right. Thanks, CJ, for joining us.
Thanks, Tony.
If you're listening to this podcast, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, you are a pickleball athlete. You are someone who is dedicated to this game. You're invested in the game. There was a really interesting quote that Dr. Peter Scales, Coach Pete, shares in his book, Mental and Emotional Training, Compete, Learn, Honor. And we talked about Billie Jean King, one of the great tennis players of all time. And she talked about how pressure was something that you should want. You should basically relish having pressure or feeling pressure when you're playing the sport, and in our case, pickleball. And the reason for that is because that means that you care. Same thing with, I think, listening to podcasts like this, or attending the summit, or taking lessons, whatever you're doing to study the game and improve as a pickleball player. What that shows you is that you care about pickleball. You care. It's an important part of you, important part of your life. And CJ and I are happy to be a part of that journey. It's what keeps us fueled, keeps us going. And so, if there's ever anything we can do for you, please let us know. You can always reach us by our names at wearepickleball.com. You can reach us at summit@wearepickleball.com, support@wearepickleball.com. There's many emails that we have, but they all go to CJ and Tony at the end of the day. And so we're happy to be a part of your pickleball journey, and love to continue doing this. So if you enjoyed the Pickleball podcast, please share it with your friends. Remember, if you liked it, they probably will too. We'll see you next week, and be well out there.